monkey head I've ever seen.
I used to be an adventurer like you. Then I took an arrow in the knee.
Can I ever tell you the definition of insanity?
Hello and welcome to episode 80 of PvA Radio. I am one of your hosts, Luke Croft. Joining me, as always, freelance gaming journalist Cody Melkline. Cody, how are you doing, my friend?
Doing well. Surviving another week.
Oh man, they just you get done with one and another is just right behind it. It's
I know.
one of those awful facts of life. Also joining us, we have three cup Hunt, Larry Hunt.
That's me. It's my entire personality.
Bringing it back old school. What are in your glasses here? You have a coffee?
No, I didn't get a coffee. I got a Coke instead.
Oh, okay.
Orange vanilla Coke.
Ooh, interesting. Not a sponsor.
Not sponsored.
Not a sponsor.
Not a sponsor.
All right. This is PvA Radio. Sorry we missed you last week. Just kind of a snowball of events. I had something pop up Wednesday, then Thursday we were like, oh shit, it's the debate, and for some reason we want to watch that. And then Friday rolled around. Anyway, we're here. We have some stuff to talk about as far as gaming news is concerned. Since we didn't have a podcast last week, you can just assume that nothing important happened. All right.
Yeah.
And all of the important stuff from last week we'll pull into this week and just pretend like it happened this week. But we are live every Wednesday at 10 p.m. Eastern Time, 7 p.m. Pacific over here on twitch.tv/itishoagie, and then the next day on youtube.com/PVA Radio and on podcast services everywhere. I think we've got all the kinks worked out. We're on all podcast services, so we're good to go there. Guys, are you ready to talk about some video game news with one another?
I think I am.
Wonderful. All right. Well, let's kick it off with The Dive, which is our weekly segment where we take a deep dive into a single topic. And Larry, I'm going to kick it over to you because you're the one who put this in here, and I just moved it up to The Dive.
All right. So we got a very sad announcement from Cyberpunk 2077. They tweeted out a long announcement that the game is being delayed by about 21 days. The new release date is December 10th. And part of the reason for that, they say, is that they have to prepare and test 9 versions of the game, which I hadn't really thought about, but they list all of the things there that they have to test for. Xbox One, Xbox One X, compatibility on Xbox Series S and X, PS4, PS4 Pro, compatibility on PS5, PC, Stadia, while working from home. And they kind of explain what it means to, they achieved their gold master, but that means they continue to improve the game. They'll put out the improvements on the Day Zero patch. And another tweet got a lot of attention because when they had announced the release date, a guy had tweeted at them asking, is this a definite release date? Because I want to go ahead and request time off from work, no take backsies. And they said it was, and now they've turned around with the take backsies, which is, a pretty big deal.
Yep. So can't say I'm too shocked by any of this, right? Like, Cyberpunk is one of those things. It's just like, I'll believe it's out when it's right, and before then, just assume it's gonna keep getting kicked down the road. But I don't know. You start to get into some weird territory when you start talking about December releases for a game. Like, December is kind of notably quiet. Not a whole lot of very successful games that you can think of that have December dates, and I guess Cyberpunk just understands they kind of transcend the model, right?
Yeah, and I also think, it's also just a weird year in terms of releases and in terms of what production schedules and work in general looks like. I feel like getting upset over a release date in 2020 of any piece of entertainment is a fool's errand.
Are you saying that there are other things going on in this world?
That is what I'm saying.
We should maybe have some empathy over a studio who's trying to produce one of the largest games to date. just to give them some latitude to figure it out.
One of the most ambitious games to date across 9 platforms, as Larry said, in the middle of a global pandemic.
I do it every Tuesday.
Who could have foreseen this event?
I don't know. We've announced a couple delays since I've gotten to Modus, and look, we don't publish anything even like percentagely to scale of Cyberpunk, but people at least like in our circle have always been really gracious when we announce a delay. Like, it seems like there is a large chunk of the gaming audience who's kind of let that idea seep in that, like, hey, this is just giving a game time to be good. Like, so have some patience. But I also know that some subsequent tweets from other people that work at CD Projekt Red were like, how stupid is it to send death threats and all this shit? And really, how stupid is it to send death threats?
Pretty stupid.
It's literally a game.
Yes. Yep. That you will eventually get to play.
Yeah. I just can't, I fundamentally can't understand like the lack of empathy you have to have. Like, these are people who have in some weeks done nothing other than work on this game for you, working 100-hour work weeks, and people are sending them death threats. I mean, those aren't the people who are making these decisions in the first place. So it's misdirected rage at the very least, but I don't think any entertainment property is worth getting that riled up over. And it's like a fundamental lack of empathy and a fundamental lack of priorities, if that's the thing that you get the most upset about in this world. You'll see me that upset or not next week on Tuesday. And that's something that actually matters in the world.
No, nothing will be decided on Tuesday, so don't worry about worry about getting upset there.
My brain was like, what's happening on Tuesday?
It's like, the PS5 coming out already? That's something that matters.
Come on.
To the point of the people that you're sending these threats to make these decisions, like, yeah, just pause and think. Nobody was like, I'd really like to keep working really intensively for another 21 days.
Yeah.
Not to mention, just as a rule of thumb, guys, just understand the people that are reading the shitty things that you're saying on social media and are tasked with responding to you about saying those shitty things likely have nothing to do with the thing that you're upset about. All right? Let's just, write that down somewhere. Like, maybe have a sticky note on your monitor that says, reminder, that person is a human. And, let's just not say shitty things even if we're upset about something.
Mm-hmm.
I do want to get back. We've given that enough air, I think. I do want to get back to kind of the reasons for this. And first of all, it's not just the testing on 9 different platforms, but it's the testing on 9 different platforms, understanding that up until a few months ago, studios were super limited on their access to next gen hardware. And that's not just like little guys, that's big guys as well. People that weren't in the first party suite weren't privy to a lot of they were privy to the specs, but not to the architecture and the actual hardware of the next gen hardware. So you have to think that all of the testing that's been taking place on Xbox Series X and PS5, like natively on that platform, has been done in the last 4 months. When was it announced? July was when they were fully revealed. So June, July. So yeah, that it's impressive to me. Like, that's one of the things that we at Modus pride ourselves on as as an indie publisher, is our ability to sim ship across different platforms. And the lift to just do like a Steam, PS4, Xbox One, Nintendo Switch launch is insane. And that's just 4 platforms. And they're looking at sim shipping across 9. That's insane.
Yeah, I think in subsequent interviews with some members of the team, and I think in the announcement itself too, they note that somewhere along the line, this game became a lot more next gen than they were probably anticipating. And it seems like the delay is not only to kind of make sure the delay is largely to make sure it's optimized across all those platforms. And apparently it's struggling on the platforms you would assume it's struggling on, which are this current gen of consoles. And so I think, sorry, go ahead, Larry.
And to that point, it's worth remembering how long this game's been in development. Like, I think we were 2 houses ago for you, Luke, when this game was announced.
Yeah, no, without a doubt.
So we were still doing Play 3 podcast.
It's been over 5 years, yeah.
So yeah, just it evolved. It became more than what it was back then. And I'm very confident that when it gets here, it's going to be worth the wait. Like, I really can't wait for this game.
Well, you brought up a really great point, Cody, in that like the whole strategy has changed. This game was supposed to be out in what, March, April?
Yeah,
what was the original?
It was originally March. It was originally March.
So March. So they were looking at like, oh, we're going to get this thing shipped on Xbox One and on PS4, and then we're going to have the better part of half a year to figure out the next gen thing. But really, there's honestly like, you can argue, hey, they should focus on PS4 and Xbox One because that's where the most of your install base is going to be. But from just like a marketing perspective and the way that people are just ravenous for new experiences on their next gen console, like, it totally makes sense to put emphasis on not just making this game run on PS5 and Xbox Series X, but to be able to take advantage of the technology as well.
Yeah, making it the best possible version on those systems. I remember in March, the conversation was like, am I going to buy this in March and then like have to restart my save when I shift over to next gen consoles? And now obviously that question has been answered largely by Microsoft and Sony in terms of how that works. But like now the conversation is, for me at least, like, I know what system I'm going to be getting it on at this point. Like, I'm going to be getting it on next gen. It's not because it's coming out much longer after those consoles launch than we even thought it would be.
Think about how much more you got wrong about the current state of the world in October, back when you were thinking you were going to play this in March.
Jeez. Can we go back to that?
Yeah, seriously.
I'll be wrong about everything.
Yeah,
take me back there.
If this was the worst thing you got wrong, we'll take that year every time.
Please.
My entire next 5 years has shifted.
But I think like we've talked about, I think we talked about a delay with this game. How many weeks ago? Not too long ago, I feel like.
No, I can't remember when the last delay was announced. I can look it up while you continue.
And at that point, I think we'll probably talk about this, and this might be the time to talk about it, but we talked at that point about the conversation around crunch and like how I feel like the dialogue around crunch has obviously become much more kind of at the center of the way games are covered and the way people write about how games are made. I feel like it used to be like when you heard a delay, people were obviously mad. People are still mad, but there was that side of it like, oh, it gives them more time to work on it. That's great. And that's obviously part of this narrative. But like the flip side of that is, again, as you said, Luke, like this is another 21 days they have to work on this. And it's not even like this game had gone gold, and we can probably talk about what that actually means for a game. People assume that like gone gold, work's done. Put your hands down, walk away from your keyboards. That's not how it works at all. Like even after a game goes gold, obviously accepting this where it has been delayed even further, even if it had gone gold and it came out on the 19th of November, they're still working on that day 0, day 1 patch on top of whatever multiplayer they end up releasing. Like this is a significant chunk of these people's lives that is just continuing to go on. And it doesn't even seem like we've heard news come out about this, that they weren't even aware of this until everybody else learned about it, which is due to a lot of things. And we might be able to talk about that as well. But like, this is the way I see this is, sure, it's great they can make it even better. But at a certain point, I feel like it's a sunk cost for your employees. How perfect do you want this thing to be on that first day?
Yeah, so a little history into Cyberpunk's release dates. So
Yeah.
it was E3 of last year that they announced that they were going to be releasing in March. That was the Keanu Reeves moment, and we all sat on this podcast and said, "There's not a chance in hell this game
Nope.
is going to be coming in March." They then delayed it to September 17th, which I don't even remember that being the release date ever, but they did.
I do remember that for a short period of time.
And then on June 18th of 2020, they delayed to November 19th. And now, what was it, yesterday? On the 27th is when they delayed to December. So, Cody, I know you were going to bring this up, but I kind of want to bring it up at this point.
Please. Yeah, you do it.
Cyberpunk is an iceberg in the middle of the video game industry ocean, and when ships see that they are on its path, they are making decisions to divert from said iceberg. So Cyberpunk's moving to September. I'm sure there's a bunch of studios and developers that are talking about, oh, we need to get out of September. They moved to November. Again, big scramble. We need to get out of November. They moved to December. Again, probably a big scramble that they need to get out of December. Not that there's that much that's going on in December, but it's just crazy that there's like this title. I just can't remember another time where there was a title like this getting moved like this, that it was clear like it was turning the lights on and studios were scattering away from it so that they wouldn't just get mowed up.
I feel like the last one we had talked about was Red Dead 2, but that had only been delayed, I think, once, maybe. And that also obviously the circumstances around when that game was coming out were drastically different than they are now. But yeah, it just takes up so much air in the room. And I mean, it's one of those things where I would be absolutely shattered if I were a developer that had delayed my game due to Cyberpunk coming out, and then Cyberpunk moves into December where I've now delayed my game to.
I'd love to look at to find examples of that.
Yeah, I would too. At the same time, I'd be absolutely over the moon if I had announced my game was coming out in that kind of November block and Cyberpunk moves out of the way and now my game gets a little bit more airtime.
I'd also be curious to know like what other AAA games kind of read the tea leaves. Like, I mean, you guys have probably seen like Watch Dogs is suffering from some pretty like severe game breaking bugs on at least Xbox. And that's a game that I feel like would have loved the option to be like, oh man, we'd love to take that middle of November slot if Cyberpunk's not going to be. But you see that Cyberpunk
and another Ubisoft game isn't coming out.
Yeah, which one's coming out? Oh,
Assassin's Creed comes out like a few weeks later.
Yeah, so but you know that they are like sitting there looking at their competitive calendar and saying, "Oh, Cyberpunk's going to be sitting there in November. Like, we need to get out before Black Friday." So we're going to go in at the beginning of October. Like, they would have killed for those extra weeks to be able to add some polish. But
for sure,
I'm sure they weren't the only AAA studio or AAA publisher that looked at their competitive calendar, saw that, and were like, not touching that with a 10-foot pole. Also, can you guys hear that coming over the microphone?
No.
Oh, okay.
I heard it barely. Yeah.
I have no idea what it is. It sounds like a freaking, I don't know if we're like getting nuked or something. Who knows? It sounds like a siren. So if I'm just here one moment and gone the next, and the stream goes dark, you two just carry on, right?
Mm-hmm.
We'll get so many views though.
Don't mourn for me, you know.
If your streaming setup survives, can I have it?
Yeah, definitely. Sweet. I mean, I feel like somebody would want to study it if it survived that, but sure.
Yeah.
Because much like the November time slot, this house will be just totally cleared by this one large bomb that's being dropped in the middle of it.
I gotta say, for purely selfish reasons, I'm sort of relieved that it's been pushed back, so I'll have a little bit more time to dedicate to some of the games that are coming out kind of in that November time frame, like Assassin's Creed. But I'm just increasingly more conflicted about, especially when it comes to this game, conflicted about delays and what it means for the team. and what it means for the overall product. Like we know, we know from The Witcher 3 that CD Projekt Red are perfectionists, and that's a great thing, but it can also certainly be a sort of destructive thing as well, if taken to its logical conclusion.
Well, I can tell you that any delay is going to result in the work that we're hearing about.
Sure.
CD Projekt, like, because you're trying to get as many fixes, and this is what we talked about when we were talking about crunch the last time we talked Cyberpunk. It's just like the list of fixes aren't going to all be rectified in this day zero patch either. And so, but it's about getting as many as you can into it as you can. And then think about the fact that, like, okay, they're going to have to submit the day zero patch still 2 weeks before the Xbox One version goes. So that the work doesn't stop there, though. Then you start looking at your next title update and stuff like that. So when you see patches like this, it's not because it's like, oh, and I think this is where we kind of used to get the conversation wrong a little bit. And I think that we've had our eyes open recently, because we used to think like, oh, delay it. And if you delay it enough, you'll be able to like stretch the timelines out and give people some time to breathe. And that's just like not how it works. Other things creep in and fill the space.
Yeah, it doesn't stretch out the crunch. It just prolongs it.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just feel so bad for some of the and you mentioned this, Larry, like some of the devs had like scheduled vacation time like after the 19th, and suddenly have to come back to work. It's tough.
Yep.
Well, and I think we're back to the conversation though about like, I'm guessing that there's something, not contractually, I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, like I feel like there's a part of them that is beholden to getting this game out in 2020.
Yeah.
And it's not just a strategic thing. It's maybe like to deliver on promises to shareholders, something like that. But December is such a weird time to try to release. And because it's just not a place where we see a lot of AAA games. So I think this has something to do with this. I don't know. I think it makes me a little nervous about what the state of the game is going to be like on especially those next gen consoles when it releases, because it's like, I don't know if 21 days even really gives you the time to do what needs to be done if you feel like the quality isn't there, or I don't know exactly what those issues are, but just the weird move here makes me concerned about at least some of the experiences. Maybe, who knows, maybe it's the Stadia experience.
Yeah, it's a very risky time slot to release in for sure. And I think you're right that Cyberpunk, just off of the name and the pedigree, like they can release whenever they want to release. But it is still a weird time. You got to think it's going to impact sales a little bit, because for the most part, Christmas shopping is done by December 10th. And the pedigree ain't selling anything to mom and dad if they're Christmas shopping on Black Friday. Like that ship's going to have sailed. So yeah, I feel like it's got to be something bigger than, well, we just want to make it look a little better.
Yeah, I genuinely wonder how it runs on current gen hardware. Because I feel I like every kind of AAA, like any game, you want to show, when they do show it off, they try to show it off in the best way possible, which is on a really high scale PC. I don't know if I've seen any footage of it playing on a PS4 or an Xbox One. But
I'm sure we haven't.
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't know why they would show that to people.
Yeah. I don't know. It'll be interesting. The other thing I'm interested in is the projections. Like, hey, what do sales projections look like with a mid-November release versus a December 10th release?
Yeah. And also, like, pivoting this back to the devs as well. Like, last time we had talked about how they have that kind of clause where the devs get 10% of, it's not revenue, 10% of the profit of that in fiscal year 2020. And so now that time and that amount of money would seemingly be even smaller than it would be if it had launched on the 19th. I don't know how that impacts what that 10% is, because as far as I know, their fiscal year is different than our fiscal year. I think it's the calendar year, right? The Polish fiscal year is like January to December.
I think at least CD Projekt Red's is, from the stuff that I was reading. So
so I mean, I haven't heard much written about that, so I'd be interested to hear what CD Projekt Red has to say about it.
Yeah, because it's not like they're compressing 7 weeks of sales now into 3 weeks and like, it's going to sell the same. Like that's not.
Yeah,
it's not how
that's
it
not
works.
how it works.
So, all right. Well, we'll see more on Cyberpunk. I'm sure we'll definitely have more conversations about it close to the launch. Hopefully, this is the last delay for the developer's sake, and for Cody's sake, right?
We should do an impressions episode when it finally does come out.
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna play it. So,
yeah,
trying to figure out what I'm gonna play it on. So I think it might burn my computer up. All right, well, let's move on to The Slant, which is the segment of the show where we talk about some of the most interesting pieces of gaming news from the week and give our takes on it. And Cody, let's kick it over to you.
Yeah, this is technically news from the week before this past one.
The magic of cinema.
This is the magic of editing. This is actually oddly tied to something we talked about in our last episode about Joe Biden kind of making inroads into Animal Crossing and like politics and politicians using gaming as a platform. But I'm sure everybody has kind of heard about this at this point. But Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Congresswoman from New York, 2 weeks ago, she streamed Among Us, which is already kind of a hit game on Twitch. She streamed to over 430,000 people on Twitch, and nearly 1 million if you take into account like YouTube and Facebook and all that, and people who were like streaming with her, which were some pretty big names. And she played the game, but she also used it as an opportunity to kind of talk about the election and kind of getting out and voting and what that means this time around. And I only bring this up because not only when this event happened, but like when all the coverage about it came out the next day, I'm like, I feel like we almost predicted this in so many ways.
Yeah.
I saw so many pieces.
Who would do it.
Yeah, exactly. I saw so many pieces written after stream itself talking about how like, this is the future of how politicians will use games, and this is a good step forward for how games are viewed by political figures in the media. I think some of that stuff perhaps maybe is jumping the gun a little bit, but I do think this was a notable kind of instance of this kind of thing. Like 430,000 people is a lot. I think didn't that set some sort of record? I don't think it was the first kind of at the top, but it was somewhere in the top five.
Third highest number of concurrent viewers ever on a single person's Twitch stream. That's from the Polygon article.
It's almost 430,000 more Twitch viewers than I've ever streamed to.
You're almost there, though.
Larry has the fourth highest number of concurrent viewers at 7.
The drop there is significant. It's so interesting.
Did you guys watch any of it?
I
watched some of it afterwards. Yeah,
Lauren and I actually caught it live. I don't remember why, but I think they mentioned her page on. I don't know. For some reason, I was already following her page, and then I logged on to Twitch that night, and we watched it for about 45 minutes. And I think that the way that this was done is the only way I would really want to see it done, which is where like it wasn't a, hey, I don't understand this platform, but I'm going to go live here because people are going to watch me, and I'm going to just totally use it for something that it's not really used for. Like, even when, like, Bernie Sanders would hop on Twitch and, like, do his little, like, just sit there and talk at the camera kind of things, like, it didn't feel like a Twitch stream. It just felt like a video that just so happened to be over here on Twitch. But for this stream, it was very much like in the spirit of Twitch. It was very clear that this is not the first time that she's played video games. It wasn't something she was doing as some sort of like ploy to get in with the young crowd. It was genuine. And it was also not incredibly political. Like,
Yeah.
yes, she talked about going and voting, but she never talked about who to go vote for. I mean, you can assume who she wants you to vote for. But, and it just goes to show, like, and not to give this group as much oxygen either, but the number of people who I saw that were like, oh my gosh, I can't even go to Twitch to get away from this shit, blah, 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 blah. It's like, bro, she was playing Among Us with 7 of her friends and didn't talk at all about policy and barely even talked about going to vote. You're just being super sensitive. Like, but I think that's why this works. Like, it's a brand recognition thing. It's like an awareness campaign, right? Like, you don't need to go on there and try to sell us on who you are or what your politics are, but just by going on and streaming to 430,000 people, like, now people who may not have known you before know you now. So
yeah,
I thought it was a smart move.
I have refined what I would like to see on Twitch as far as politics goes, and it's a debate using an arena shooter. And when your opponent is respawning, their mic is cut. So the more you kill your opponent, the more time you get to talk uninterrupted.
I love this idea. And
That's amazing.
And as gaming oracles, we can assume that we will have an event like this in the coming weeks.
Get Biden on the sticks.
Can you imagine? He's like, I can't look down from the ceiling. All I see is the ceiling.
And he is using a flight stick.
I do, to your point, Luke, I do think this was the best possible way to approach this. Like, there was a total lack of cynicism. Like, obviously this benefits her in ways that are not exactly numbers based, but it doesn't it impacts her kind of presence in the public eye, and it impacts how people view her. But she approached it like the focus remained on the game, a game that's entertaining in its own right. And she was entertaining playing it, and she was entertaining just like seeing an acting congresswoman like stab people in the back in this video game. There's something inherently entertaining about that, and she didn't like it seemed like she was super into it. She seemed like she was having a good time, and that's infectious. I feel like regardless of what you think about her politics, I personally am aligned with her on most, if not everything that she kind of speaks about. But regardless of how you think about her politics, like, she's extremely savvy when it comes to this stuff. She knows how to use these platforms in the right way and use it in a genuine way. And it seemed like in terms of an ideal scenario for how politics and games can cross over, that's as good as it's going to get. She was able to spread a message that's universal, like, get out and vote. Doesn't matter who you're voting for, get out and vote, and have a good time while doing it. And as a platform, especially during COVID, like, to be able to reach 430,000 people is incredible. It's not something to scoff at all.
Now, to say, we may have talked about this in our last conversation about this too, but I think that this isn't the first time we've seen a politician leverage a platform and really understand the platform and leverage it in a way. Like, arguably, this is what Trump does with Twitter in a very different way, with very different end goals in mind, right? But I think, like, one thing that this shows with this stream is, like, there's a lot of range for how people can use this in a natural and, like, organic and quote unquote genuine, but not like the lifting your hearts genuine. But, like, there's a lot of toxicity on Twitch too that's really, really popular, you know? And I think that there is not space in that it should be there. But like, I think that there is opportunity for people who can leverage Twitch like Trump has leveraged Twitter over the years. And so it's going to be interesting to me just seeing how this plays out over time. Like, AOC is not the only person, and plus she said we can call her AOC, just Mike Pence can't call her AOC. So she did say that in the middle of the stream. But AOC is not the only person who's aware of this as a platform, and she's probably not the only person in the political realm who's like thinking about ways to use this. And now that she has used it, we're going to probably start to see more and more flood to it. It's going to be interesting to see Twitch kind of wrestling, as they so often struggle to do, with their own identity and their own kind of guidelines for how this platform should be used. I mean, I think back to, I don't know, did we talk, this may have been before we came back from hiatus, but like the way that the US military was using the like esports scene in Twitch to recruit, and like Twitch had to really wrestle with what that looked like and how much latitude they'd give to the army to use it as a recruitment tool, to the point where they were like sharing fake giveaways where you thought you were like winning a scuff controller, but in reality you were like signing up for more information about enlisting and shit like that. Like, Twitch is gonna be faced with a dilemma very, very quickly, very, very soon, on like, okay, how do we deal with the influx of politicians who are trying to leverage this in less of a genuine manner than AOC did with the stream. And like, how do you guys see that conversation playing out with Twitch? What do you think are some of the things that they need to like safeguard against?
Oh, okay. So in my mind, those are two different questions, and this is very cynical of me. What do they need to do? There needs to be a delineation between what they support and what they don't. I think they're going to have to be some conversations about whether like a politician could be a Twitch partner. That could get kind of sketchy. I wasn't aware of those fake giveaways. I'm kind of reeling from that right now. Like, you definitely want to safeguard against that kind of thing, where it looks like you're doing one thing and you're doing another just to throw people on mailing lists, because that's going to be a lot of people's primary desires. Let's just trick people into giving us their information. But as far as what is Twitch going to do, is they're going to put some guidelines on paper and enforce them all willy-nilly, and you won't really know who's going to get tagged for what.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I guess it, like, what is the old saying about that a congressperson said about pornography? You know when you see it.
Yeah.
I feel like the line for this is I guess I just don't know, because there haven't been so many examples of it to kind of be able to point to how wrong this could go. Like, we have seen it on Twitter, and Twitter has been horrible with this stuff.
Yeah.
In terms of like moderating what content is on their platform and who can say what. I would hate to see kind of Twitch go that way if kind of politicians do make inroads like this into the platform. But as for what is like what will make it onto Twitch, I am not familiar enough with Twitch as a platform and kind of their rules around this to speak to that, unfortunately.
As far as that goes, like, I think what you're alluding to is like the policing of misinformation.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Like, I don't see Twitch doing anything for that, to be honest with you. Like, I don't.
Well, in reality, like, how could they? That's the problem with Twitch, is like, it's kind of a transient's the right word, but like, it moves so fast, and like, at least with Twitter, there's a 200 and however many character block that you can screenshot and have. You can argue you can clip stuff on Twitch, but a politician goes on streams for 3 hours and just for 3 hours spouts a bunch of bullshit. You can't, like, that's the that's the thing that makes the disinformation stuff so scary right now. Is just the volume at which you're bombarded with it. Like that's the strategy. It's the feature. It's not a bug of it. It's like we can bombard you with so much misinformation you cannot fact check it in real.
The purpose is to make you so distrustful of information that you give up on having the capacity to verify sources. And then you wind up with a significant voter block that is like, well, I just don't trust anything. And they think they've won, but really they've succumbed to what the end game was.
I can see Twitch and live streaming platforms like, you could argue that this has existed for a long time. Like politicians have had the chance to do like YouTube stuff like that, but like Twitch is such, it's so defined by the live streaming side of it. YouTube, it's a portion of what you can do there. So I don't know. I think it's going to be interesting to pan out. But you're so right, Larry. Like Twitch has not proven at any point in its existence that it can like adapt with the times in any meaningful way before like just letting shit get out of hand. And especially when you look at like some of the instances where we've seen total categories just get completely co-opted by filth, you know.
For a whole weekend that one time.
Yeah, and it's not just politicians, but it's also political activists and extremists who may begin to leverage the platform and co-opt categories and things like that. Hold on, we had a comment here in the chat. Moffat says the whole thing makes me think of more politicians being active on other platforms like Reddit. Who wouldn't want an AMA ask me anything with the Supreme Court? You know, and I guess to Moffat's point, like there are other platforms that haven't been leveraged with, I mean, politicians obviously go on Reddit and do AMAs and that kind of stuff. Bernie is famous for having done multiple AMAs on Reddit. But I guess you gravitate to where you feel welcomed. And the thing about it is like there is a large toxic corner of Twitch who would likely embrace with open arms some fringe politics and give it the oxygen to live. And I think it's those kinds of things like, and with Twitch being such a snowbally platform where the more you get views, the more likely you are to get more viewers. It's just a terrifying thing to see, like, that could possibly get leveraged. Now that I've painted this gray dystopia, I will say AOC stream was very entertaining and I think done the way it should be done, which is very like in the spirit of the platform itself and not trying to leverage it for something that it really isn't.
For sure.
All right, let's move on. Larry, move on to you. And let's talk about Cyberpunk again.
Yeah, we don't
Delayed
again. While we've been talking. Nah. I saw an article last week from GameDebate.com. And I didn't write the author down, and I don't see an author.
Stuart Thomas.
Okay, thank you.
I got you.
Oh yeah, there it is.
Very small.
It's worth going and checking out the article. Well, more importantly, like you can go to the YouTube video in the article. But it's really neat. Cyberpunk, at the time of this article, was just under 30 days away from launch. That's no longer true. But
it didn't age well.
I'm going to read the second paragraph of this article. Quote, Cyberpunk 2077 will be using a new technology known as Jolly, which is essentially an AI-based facial animation software that automates lip syncing and facial expressions across 10 different languages through the use of machine learning. It's some pretty incredible tech, and you can watch the official presentation below if you're interested, end quote. And just, I don't know if you guys had a chance to watch this, but it's just really awesome where technology is at. Because, you know, typically you have to do the face capture for every language if you want the lips to match up with the words that are being said. But this AI can take the faces and for 10 different languages produce the lip movements that you need. And I just thought that was a really neat development in games. You know, I'm spoiled where so many games are lip synced to English, but I can imagine the frustration of of the words and the lips not matching up. And you know, it's a minor thing, but it is a quality of life thing. It's an improvement thing. It makes the experience more enjoyable. So I just felt like throwing this out here and telling people you should check that out. It's a pretty neat piece of technology.
It is very cyberpunk.
It really is.
Yeah. It does. I mean, that sort of thing does make a difference. It makes it feel more inclusive. It makes you feel like you are actually like thought of for the production. Like for a game like the scale of Cyberpunk, I can't imagine. Like, imagine all of the time and resources they would have to pour in to actually do this, across 10 different languages, like manually without this program. And from the video, it looks like it does work pretty well. I can already think of a number of other games where I would have loved to see this. Not to call out Ghost of Tsushima, but like, you had Japanese and English, and the Japanese ended up being, it was a weird kind of like whiplash, because that's a game that takes place in Japan. They have like, they're basing it on Kurosawa's movies, and you could have it in Japan, but like all of the mouths were moving to English. So it was like a weird reverse dub situation. I would have loved to see it used in that, and it wouldn't have if they're only doing with 2 languages. So this opens up a lot of great possibilities and a little bit more kind of accessibility for a lot of people around the globe who want to
hit the go offline for a brief moment. So we dropped for a second, and we're now back. I apologize for that. It's right above the button to show my face big, and I need to probably move that. Oh man, there should be like a double tap to confirm. But back to what we were talking about. I think this still speaks to this point of like, the advances that we're seeing in games are so like nuanced, and like, we're not seeing these massive. I think we are seeing some cool things with like lighting and particle effects and those kinds of. We're not seeing like the leaps that we are seeing from like PS2 to Xbox, PS2 to PS3, like those kinds of graphical leaps. But I just love stuff like this, and machine learning is terrifying, and we're all gonna die someday. So a bunch of robots who can move their lips to any language that they want.
They can tell you they're going to kill you in any language.
That's right. Let me refresh to make sure that we're all back here. Live television, guys. The magic of cinema.
This is cinema.
All right, let's move on. Anything else to say about lip syncing?
No.
All right, this is another story that through the magic of cinema we're pulling to this week. This was a weird story, guys. From this is from gamesindustry.biz. James Batchelor says Google is distancing itself from Stadia creative director Alex Hutchinson. So this Stadia creative director goes on Twitter last week and says, quote, "Streamers worried about getting their content pulled because they used music they didn't pay for should be more worried about the fact that they're streaming games they didn't pay for as well. It's all gone as soon as publishers decide to enforce it. The real truth is the streamers should be paying the developers and publishers of the games they stream. They should be buying a license like any real business and paying for the content that they use." This got the internet all in a tizzy. So let's talk about it. This was going to be our dive last week. Go ahead, Luke.
It's usually so calm. So
I know it takes a lot to rile them up. You know, the people of the internet's generally docile. What were your initial thoughts when you saw this tweet?
I'm going to try to walk across a tightrope here.
Oh man, let's get the large pole out.
There's an extent to which what he says makes sense to me. I don't agree with it at all.
There's the tightrope.
But you think about just so up until a few months ago, I was a youth minister, and if I wanted to show a Disney movie to 5 kids at my church, I needed to pay $200 to do that. That's just how these things work. But with this thing in particular, and you know, I'm sorry, I'm going to jump ahead just a little bit. Stadia officially distanced themselves from the statement.
Oh yeah,
Pretty quickly.
yeah.
For this reason, that there is a symbiotic relationship between streamers and game developers. A lot of game sales happen because people watch these games get played on Twitch and decide, hey, I'd like to play that too. And Google in particular is leaning heavily into that. So like, you know, this guy in this position of making games, I see it, I get it, and I think he's totally wrong.
I didn't even think about that part. Like, one of the whole things about Stadia as a platform when it reaches like its fruition is going to be if you're watching somebody playing this on YouTube or on Twitch, you can just take over at their point in the game and play it via Google Stadia. I didn't even think about that part. It's so
It's
ridiculous.
like a key feature.
Oh, yeah. To your point, Larry, and then we'll get Cody in here. Nobody is coming to your youth group event watching Herbie Fully Loaded and thinking, damn, I'm going back home and buying Herbie Fully Loaded as soon as I get there. You know, that's totally different. Like, Among Us is existing right now fully off of the backs of streamers who have picked up that game. Fall Guys, again, a really coordinated and well executed strategy with streamers that carried its way through organically to where, like, people are playing it, people are watching it, people say, damn, that looks fun, I want to go play that. That doesn't happen with movies, it doesn't happen with music, like, video games is such a weird medium, because, especially when it comes to like multiplayer titles, because every game is different. Me watching somebody else play it is not me playing it. Now you can maybe argue with single player games that maybe that story's a little different. I think that maybe there is some cost of sales from watching somebody play a single player game rather than playing it through yourself, but that's a nuanced discussion. This is totally asinine. Like, like every single video game company in the universe is sending codes of their games out to streamers saying, hey, can you play this, because they recognize the beneficial relationship in the things that they receive from giving those games away and from people picking up and playing their titles.
We talked just 2 weeks ago about Amazon's game, which I can't remember the name of now, which is sort of the point of the story.
Crucible.
Yes. And how one of the reasons it failed was because Amazon did not leverage the platform that it happens to own, Twitch, in order to push this game.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like an agreed upon fact. Like, it's a relationship that we understand to be true in this industry. You're right, Luke. It's not like any other industry where, like, owning the media and, like, experiencing the media is owning it to a certain extent, or you're streaming it or whatever. But, like, so much of games is experiential, and so, like, when you see someone playing a game and it's entertaining, you want to experience it for yourself. It's not like the same as, like, I'm trying to think of an analog and I can't really think of it, but like, it's just a known fact that, like, if your game does well with streamers, it drives sales. Mm-hmm. And, like, it gets people in that community and talking about it. Even if it's not driving sales, it's at least driving conversation, which can expose it to more people and eventually lead to sales. Like, I just I don't even know if I can see why he would say this coming from the position that he's coming from, but, like, I would have loved to be a fly on the wall or a fly on the Zoom wall of the conversation that ensued post this tweet. Because I can't imagine Stadia and Google were pleased with one of their developers, like, openly flouting something that's, like, completely contrary to their entire platform.
So, I don't know if you guys saw Jacksepticeye's response to this. You guys familiar with Jacksepticeye? So Jacksepticeye,
I'm familiar. I don't watch him.
He's a YouTuber, very popular. Well, he tweeted. I'm going to put this up on the screen here. Let me send you guys the link as well, so you can
Yeah, I
laugh
haven't
with
seen
me.
this.
Go back over here. Streamlabs, hit the news button. Don't hit the live button. He says, I find this thinking extremely ironic considering you have fan art of me, a streamer, as your banner from when I played Savage Planet. I thought this reply tweet. Yes, here we go. If you click on that tweet, it'll show you Jacksepticone's threaded reply as well. He says, you've even cropped out their watermark in the banner and haven't given them credit for it anyway.
That's a cell phone.
Oh
That's
my
a solid cell
gosh.
phone.
Amazing.
Absolutely astonishing.
I think that speaks more for itself than anything else.
Yeah. And I guarantee you, we click on his profile, that's not his banner image anymore.
Oh, 100%.
Oh, it is. It still is.
It still is?
It's still his banner.
That's even worse.
He's sticking to his guns.
He's like, look, my video game is worth more than this person's art. All right, that's essentially what you're saying in that. But yeah, I do think that kind of shut the book on the argument. Like,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
you've given up any high ground that you claim to have when you're using stolen art from somebody else. When there's a very simple way on this platform to credit them.
Yep.
All right. Probably a good thing that wasn't the dive because we all really agreed on what we were talking about there. Let's move on.
I mean, I feel like we could have roasted him for a solid half hour, but yeah, we got other things to talk about.
Friend of the show, Phil Spencer. That joke just never gets old to me. He's never been on the show, guys. It's a total lie, like everything else.
We'd love to
But he
have
did
him on the
release
show, though.
Battletoads for me.
That is true. This is from Rebecca Valentine over at gamesindustry.biz. Phil Spencer says, quote, you're going to see lower priced hardware as a part of our ecosystem, end quote. The relevant quote is, quote, I think you're going to see lower priced hardware as a part of our ecosystem when you think about streaming sticks and other things that somebody might want to just go plug into their TV and go play via xCloud. You could imagine us even having something that we just included in the Game Pass subscription that gave you an ability to stream xCloud games to your television and buying the controller, end quote. This is the natural next step, right? For Xbox to go into something like this.
Yeah, this jives with everything we've been talking about in terms of what their vision for the next generation is.
And as soon as you see xCloud like running smoothly and to perfection on the places it's on already, like you're going to see this stuff. Like this is not far down the road. This is a very soon thing, I think.
And we're talking like $60 price point.
Yeah.
You know, we're talking
How much is the only one that I've ever used is like an Amazon Fire Stick. How much is that?
I think it's probably best to compare it to something like the Chromecast Ultra.
Okay.
Since that's what you can play Stadia on, and you can buy those for $70. So
that's incredible.
Oh, I'm sorry. The Chromecast Ultra is dead. You can't buy it anymore. But yes, the Chromecast is anywhere from $50 to $70, depending.
Okay. Yeah, that's a better point of comparison.
You can get a package with the controller for $100. And so you think about like this pricing war that we're seeing right now and figuring out how to get your next gen console at the lowest cost possible. Probably kind of hard to compete with $100 with a controller. You know?
With that level of quality.
Yeah.
And that library, like the library that Xbox is going to have on this is just insane. Like, if I'm a competitor of Microsoft right now, I am just standing in awe, not sure what to do about it, to be honest.
And that's the thing. It feels like PlayStation is still miles behind on being able to even come close to competing in that space. Not just from a price point perspective, but just from an infrastructure and services perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they're not even playing the same game at this point in terms of their strategies.
Yeah. And that's been communicated. I don't think PlayStation's necessarily trying to keep up with the Joneses in that manner.
Sure.
Yeah. I would, and plus like the portability of it and like, oh, I don't have to pack a console if I'm going to go and want to play something.
That's exactly what I was thinking, especially with like the holidays and everything. Like if I could literally just take my whatever Xbox Cloud Stick or Microsoft Cloud, whatever they're going to call it. If I could just take that and a controller to my parents' house or my girlfriend's parents' house and just play on their TV without having, especially with the sizes of the consoles we have upcoming.
Yeah,
that's incredible. That's awesome.
That was actually the driving force behind this research. They're like, wow, this console is going to be hard to pack around.
Now they just need oh, go ahead.
Even more convenient, right, is being able to like hop on my parents' smart TV and install the xCloud app. And that's not that far down the road.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just hoping that they come out with a controller where you can just store the xCloud dongle inside of the controller for extra portability, like you can with wireless mice. So
that'd be cool.
All right, next story on the list, Larry.
Will you read the title real quick?
It says deleting Facebook now also removes Oculus purchases and account information from. Larry, I don't know where you find your news. You've got all the sources, man. Kit Guru? I don't even know what this is. Never seen this.
So I'll tell you what happened. Back in the early days of PvA radio, I developed a reputation for you guys would share the news, and I'd share a story from 10 years ago. And it's because usually I'm the last one to the show notes. So I had to find a subreddit that I'm not going to tell you the name of, where I'll find stories that you guys don't find.
Wow. Cutting edge.
Larry's on the dark web of gaming news.
Larry Dark Web Hunt.
I had to contact Anonymous. They had to teach me how to go to these secret websites.
I Googled how to get to the dark web.
So every time I get on, I have to send this guy my social security number to get access. It's a personalized experience, he assures me. Anyway,
have we vamped enough to give you time to load this damn article?
Yeah. Actually, what I was doing was putting the tag on Streamlabs. I wasn't prepared for the transition. I got to work on that.
Oh, I got you.
Anyway, so kitguru.net, article by Matthew Wilson. Deleting Facebook now also removes Oculus purchases and account information.
Because why wouldn't it?
Because why wouldn't it? But yeah, this is something that's worth knowing. If you are a user of Oculus and you deactivate your Facebook profile, it disables your Oculus profile. If you delete your Facebook profile, it deletes all of it. It deletes your purchases, it deletes your saves, and they're gone forever. So, just one more way Facebook is making sure that you can't escape their ecosystem once you're in. And if you are a user of Oculus, you should probably be aware of this.
Just the most harsh reminder ever that you don't own what you think you own when it comes to digital software.
Offa says, I've read that they have a jailbreak for Oculus that works around the need for Facebook. I wish that I'd figure out how to jailbreak my entire life to work around my need for Facebook.
Yeah.
Just from a
if you use Oculus, you might want to look for that jailbreak. But yeah, dude, Facebook is creepy. And I didn't realize how creepy till you got into marketing, Luke.
It's terrible.
And just finding, like, even if the thing that creeped me out the most, man, and you can correct me if I get the details wrong on this, is even if you never use Facebook is monitoring so many websites that they know where you go and they create a shadow profile for you in case you ever do use Facebook.
So they use a tracker called the Facebook Pixel, and so all kinds of if a website has like a Facebook page, they probably use a pixel to track and be able to build like audiences to advertise to. So even if you don't have a Facebook profile, if you go to one of these pages, like it tracks you and it will eventually build a profile for you based off of search history, like Google does when they decide to serve you ads. But yeah, Facebook is some shady shit, guys. I hate it.
Big news.
Yeah. Breaking news. I think it's the dive. Why does Facebook suck? All right. Well, again, all in great agreement on that. Let's move on. Next story on the list. Larry, this is...
Right.
Oh, did you have anything else you wanted to say?
No, this
Okay.
is another quick hitter. Apex Legends is having their new season next week, and with that comes the new map for sure this time, a new legend, Horizon, and a new vehicle. They're adding vehicles into the mix. So if you've been watching this show for any amount of time, you know that I am obsessed with Apex Legends, and so this is all very exciting for me. I wasn't too thrilled with this season, to be honest, but seeing how much is coming in the next season, it's got me amped up. And if you've had a little break from Apex, you might want to check it out on November 4th, I think it is.
What are your thoughts about vehicles coming to the game as someone who plays it a lot?
My understanding is that this map is so massive that it makes sense. If they were dropping them into the current maps, I don't think I'd be too crazy about that. Because although the maps are huge, they aren't like moving quickly on vehicles huge. So I'm trusting that it's going to make sense within the context of the map.
Yeah, it just sucks we're never going to be able to play with Seth ever again. Our friends.
Oh yeah, because he'll be able to drive.
Yeah, our friend Seth is permanently banned from driving us around in battle royales because of his
after PUBG.
because of his massive recklessness. So I pointed this out to Cody before the stream, but Larry, have you seen anything about the new season of League of Legends, just from like an aesthetic standpoint?
I haven't.
This looks very similar aesthetically to the new season of League of Legends, like, you know, the cherry blossoms and the like real contrasting greens and blues. Let me see if I can find a picture of the new season of League. I think it's called Fates. So
okay,
League of Legends Fates. Yeah. So I'm gonna just put I'll just send you this link right here, and I'll show this on stream as well. But has that kind of wispy pink and blue vibe, and in the same way that the league aesthetic does. Just that image at the top, but there's plenty more.
I think you got to scroll down a little for the stream.
Oh, .esports. How do I get rid of this quote today?
Oh, okay, yeah, I can kind of see that.
So this isn't the best example of it, but you know, you can look. This is another good example. But anyway, that was the first thing I thought of when I saw it.
Yeah, they've been teasing this map for a while, so I don't know how.
I'm not saying they lifted it. I'm just saying, like,
yeah.
To me, it's funny, like the way trends move. We saw this like with the Miami Vice color scheme. Like, I don't know what I guess like Vaporwave happened, and everybody kind of attached themselves to it, and it just kind of became the next big thing. And then before you know it, like the Miami Heat or have alternate jerseys with it. The Miami Mayhem or the Florida Mayhem have changed their colors in the Overwatch League to it, and it's like that color scheme is now everywhere again.
Yeah.
Right. Next story on the list, Larry. Back over to you.
All right. So this was a really interesting story to me. This is coming from PC Gamer. It's an article by Andy Chalk. The article is Bethesda intentionally sabotaged Rune 2 to protect the Elder Scrolls lawsuit update claims, which sounds pretty lofty. And then you read the article and you're like, it kind of sounds like they did. So Rune 2, I never played Rune 2. Have you guys played Rune 2?
No.
I had forgotten Rune 2 even existed, to be honest.
Probably because of what you're about to talk about.
Yeah. So Rune 2 was touted by at least one reviewer as Skyrim on steroids. Like it was considered a game that was in the vein of Elder Scrolls games, but like done really well. And according to the lawsuit, according to an interview with Matt Candler in June 2020, Matt Candler said, quote, "We could have transitioned the game if they weren't able to participate anymore. We could have transitioned naturally. Here's the source code. We'll help you find somebody." But they didn't do that. They actually did everything they could do to prevent us from supporting the product, end quote. And so what had happened was, I'm having a hard time keeping all this straight. My bad.
You need a
ZeniMax
whiteboard?
Media, yes, and Bethesda Softworks. See, I keep thinking they bought Human Head, but
No.
that's not what happened.
No.
Human Head went out of business, and on that very day, Bethesda Softworks / ZeniMax Media put together a team consisting of the entire team of Human Head. They reassembled it as Roundhouse Studios.
Roundhouse.
Yeah. It's worth noting that Human Head is the developer of Rune 2, and the lawsuit is being pushed by the publisher, Ragnarok Game, right?
Yes. Thank you. And I'm going to read another quote. This one is from the lawsuit. Quote, in an act of utter bad faith and contractual breach of confidentiality requirements, Human Head secretly provided Bethesda and ZeniMax with keys that permitted it to play a confidential pre-release version of Rune 2. This enabled Bethesda and ZeniMax to see for themselves the threat that Rune 2 posed to their hit franchise Skyrim / Elder Scrolls. Plaintiffs were never informed of this betrayal, end quote. And so there were a couple weeks there where they were forming this secret new subsidiary, Roundhouse Studios, and they got access to all Human Head's equipment. They got access to the source code. They wound up bringing this team in. They would not let the publisher have access to the source code so they could continue supporting the game like they were supposed to. The guy who was heading the project on the developer side, Human Head, they actually sent him on a business trip for a couple of days on the day of the launch of the game so that he was just completely out of the picture. And you know, Luke, I never thought about how big a deal this was till I've heard you talk about some of the projects that your company has pushed out the door. But launch day, it's a pretty big deal. It's kind of an all hands on deck kind of day.
Yes, launching products is very important in any business.
Yes. So other people who were looking into buying some of this, buying Human Head, bringing those people on, they didn't require this level of secrecy. That was sort of a ZeniMax thing. All of this is alleged. We'll have to see how the lawsuit plays out. But I gotta say, guys, for me, this looks pretty awful.
It's
from where I'm sitting.
It's really bizarre. Like,
yeah.
So when you were kind of giving me the high level of this story earlier, I thought you were talking about Bethesda buying a publisher that kind of left a developer out in the cold and yada yada by buying up the IP. That's not what this is at all. This is Bethesda buying a studio of developers who were working on a project that was apparently so good it was threatening to Bethesda, one of Bethesda's tentpole franchises. And rather than releasing it, seeing it through, and working on that game to be a killer of the Elder Scrolls franchise, they instead chose to dissolve themselves and be absorbed. There's got to be a paper trail about this somewhere, because you don't just do that for free.
Yeah.
And you don't just I don't feel like you just do that for jobs. But
yeah.
So, all right. So I'm not going to sit here and claim to know how all business dealings in gaming work, or even how business dealings at my own company work. But from what I understand, even if we're not the owners of the IP of a game, we license for a set amount of time our control over the code for that game and where and how it is released. So we as Modus Games can decide these are the platforms we're going to put it on. Obviously we're contractually obligated to do that, but we hold the source code to be able to push it out. We handle all release management for the game. When updates are made, we're the ones that are pushing those things out live. And so while we don't take control over the IP, we do maintain some sort of control over that source code. And when that is over, we go back and we hand that off to the back off to the developers when our relationship is over. That's what I don't understand about this, because it seems like the publisher, what was it, Ragnarok, didn't have their hands on the source code at all. And I'm like, how can you function as a publisher if you don't have that? What role are you playing for this game if you aren't the holders of the source code?
Yeah, that's my biggest question. That seems like something that would be under the control of the publisher and not the control of the developer, but all the evidence they provide here that's been mentioned in this version of the story seems to indicate that ZeniMax Human Head was able to kind of like distribute this pretty freely without Ragnarok's knowledge, which calls into question perhaps how Ragnarok was operating at the time, or how easily this could have been done. This is just like every detail in this lawsuit is absurd. We don't talk a lot about like the backhanded kind of behind closed doors business dealings a lot in this industry, mostly because that stuff isn't made privy to us.
No one else is in the room where it happened.
Exactly. True dad status.
He's addicted. He is addicted.
Well, like you see, this is a harsh reminder that like when we talked about this before, having blind loyalty to these companies that make your games is always going to bite you in the ass, because these are corporations, cold-blooded, business-oriented, profit-driven corporations that make these kind of moves.
I'm just trying to process the thoughts that go behind a studio being like, we'll go ahead and give this publisher unfettered access to a confidential build of our games prior to its public availability. Like that
to a game that's a direct competitor of what they're putting out and is ostensibly better than what they're putting out.
That just blows my mind, guys. It absolutely blows my mind. Like, I would think that it was maybe Bethesda that approached them, and maybe it was like, hey, let us take a look over your contract and see if there's any loopholes, and like, you know,
oh, you guys have the source code? Wow.
Or they're like, wow, we're supposed to have a contract.
What is the size of Ragnarok game as a publisher?
I have no idea.
And like, how was this Human Head's first game?
It says Rune 2 and Oblivion Song, so I don't think it was.
I guess they had another game in the works. Yeah.
Wild story, and thank you for bringing it to my attention, Larry. I hope that you keep up with this and bring us updates.
You know, I will. We'll make this my next Fallout 76 story.
There we go.
What are they asking for? Like, what's the lawsuit?
I don't think it mentions the damages, does it?
I thought it did say at the end.
Yeah, it was
no less than $100 million plus restitution for development costs. I mean, look. So if I'm getting the timeline right, Rune 2 did release, right?
Yeah.
So that means that, okay, again, I don't claim to know how all business dealings work, but from what I understand, most publishers pay developers based off of the milestones that they hit. So you hit alpha, you get a payout for that. You hit beta, you get a payout for that. Hit submission, payout for that. So yeah, there's sunk cost in this for development. Like, it wasn't just this publisher patiently waiting for the thing to be delivered. Like, they had financial skin in the game. So yeah, wild.
Human Head, just to throw out some things they developed, because they've actually been developing games since 2000. Blair Witch Volume 2, The Legend of Coffin Rock, classic. Then there are actually several Rune games. They did Prey in 2006.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Huh. Brink in 2011, which actually was published by Bethesda.
Prey was as well, wasn't it?
Prey was published by Bethesda, or the new one was at least.
Yeah, the old one was 2K Games. Which I don't
Prey
even
was 2K
remember.
Games?
Yeah, yeah.
The new Prey was published by Bethesda, yeah. Interesting crossover there.
Yeah, so there are others on the list. I'm not going to read the whole list to you, but those were the standouts.
Yeah.
And I couldn't find Ragnarok, so
I will be interested to see how this progresses as a story.
And just for some context, I just accidentally stumbled over this. The Rune 2 source code, it appears, was returned to the publisher on January of this year. So they did wind up with that. They do have the source code now, and I think they are like developing some things around.
Yeah, I think it's said at the end of that story that they're developing. Are they currently still working on the game or developing a new one?
I thought it sounded to me like it was an expansion of some sort.
Oh, right. Rune 2 has continued under the control of a new developer, Studio 369, which Ragnarok game put together earlier this year, probably coinciding with them getting access to the source code. Interesting.
Yeah.
It's named Rune 2 Decapitation Edition.
Because they lost their human head.
Yeah. That's really funny. Very funny.
But even with them eventually getting access to it, like just being kneecapped out of the gate like that, the game didn't really have a chance. So this will be interesting. We'll keep up.
All right, next story, Codsworth.
What do we got? We got a little Assassin's Creed news. Netflix revealed earlier this week that it is working on a live-action Assassin's Creed series. This is on top of the animated series it's working on and an anime series that it's working on, both tied to Assassin's Creed. This is courtesy of Game Informer's reporting on this by Liana Rupert. But quote, the upcoming live-action adaptation will be honed by Jason Altman and Daniel Kranick as executive producers, who both work at Ubisoft. And let's see. I mean, all the quotes they have in here are kind of the default things you'd expect Ubisoft and Netflix to say about their partnership and being thrilled to create an Assassin's Creed series. The subhead of this story, and any story talking about this series, should be: The Witcher made Netflix a ton of money, and now they are diving full on into video game adaptations. They have Castlevania. They had Castlevania already when The Witcher came out. I believe they are working on something Prince of Persia related as well, which is also obviously tied to Ubisoft. And then are they the ones who are doing Resident Evil, the Resident Evil live action series?
Sounds right.
Believe that's Netflix as well. So like Netflix realizes kind of the profitability of this stuff if done well, which is arguable when you're considering the first season of The Witcher, in my opinion. But people seem to like it, and it got a lot
a spicy take.
A lot of eyeballs. The show it should have been is what it became in the last episode. Is all I'm saying.
He jumped in the fighter jet, dropped that bomb, and then just thought he was going to get to keep going. And then Larry and I heat-seeking missiled him out of the sky. What the hell are you thinking,
I don't know about that yet. I don't know about that. That's a whole. We can talk about that in the after party lounge.
Go ahead.
I do think it's worth mentioning now that there's this temptation to be like, Netflix is doing a live action show. It's going to be awesome. Because Netflix has proven themselves capable of producing incredible live action content. But we forget that they've also proven themselves capable of producing some of the most abysmal live action content.
Yeah, but they put out so much material and content that it ultimately evens out.
My big thing though about, okay, let's take The Witcher. And like The Witcher has this rich world built around it, like that's very central to its story. We've been talking the last couple times we talked about Assassin's Creed about how they've kind of moved away from that centralizing point of like the I can't remember what it's called.
The Animus.
Yeah, the Animus. Like, and now it's really just let's create historical fiction wherever the fuck we want to create historical fiction. And so for me, like that just makes it weird to pull it out and be like, oh, now we're going to make a live action television series that like, what's this going to look like? Is it going to talk about the Animus and like kind of that overarching story? Or is it just going to pick an era in history and like talk about the assassins during it? But then at that point, like, why do you need the Assassin's Creed franchise to do that?
Yeah, this was my biggest question. As much as I like Assassin's Creed, I actually often ask myself the question, what is Assassin's Creed to most people? Because I feel like a lot of people like different aspects of the franchise, and because of that kind of schizophrenic split it has in terms of the present day kind of high sci-fi stuff and the historical kind of character driven stuff, it's a really confusing franchise to adapt into a live. Like they tried to. They made an Assassin's Creed live action movie starring Michael Fassbender in 2016, which did not perform well. And I haven't seen it, but by all accounts was not that great. And one of the major complaints lodged against it was like splitting that difference between kind of the overly convoluted framing device of the Animus and the at least for most people compelling aspect of the historical narrative. I feel like for a TV show it makes more sense to kind of include the Animus stuff, because that's a helpful framing device in terms of an episodic TV show, unless they're going to be doing which I kind of wonder, maybe this is more interesting for me, kind of doing like an anthology show where like each season features a different historical period that would allow them to explore eras of history they most likely will not explore in the games. That's what I'm sort of interested to see. I'd love to see not like a straight adaptation of any of the games. I don't want to see Ezio. I don't want to see any more of Ezio, which I think they would probably be most inclined to adapt. But this is interesting to me on a number of levels. I'm not sure I am hopeful about it just because of what it takes to adapt an Assassin's Creed show and what that means. But it's interesting. The fact, I also don't think that all three of the Assassin's Creed related properties they've pitched and kind of decided on are going to come out. They're really diving head on into this thing.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. It's either going to be, they're either going to do the Animus or it's going to be an anthology. I don't really see any other way to do this in a way that makes sense to the franchise. And I don't know. Although I wasn't a fan of like the Animus idea in the games either. I'd almost rather see that than an anthology with Netflix. But I'm also more open to bad sci-fi than you guys. So.
Yeah, it's an intriguing. Like the idea behind it is super cool. Like being able to dive into genetic memory and experience the memories of your ancestors. There are some cool kind of philosophical quandaries there, but Assassin's Creed never bothered to explore it.
Yeah, let's just go all out and do this Doctor Who style, where every episode we're jumping into a different memory.
Oh my god. The production cost of that would be astronomical.
Well, we'll see.
Not if you did it poorly.
That's true. All on green screen. But like shitty green screen. Or blue screen.
I've apparently reached my free limit on Bloomberg articles, so I can't open this one that you just sent.
Oh no. Oh, this is me.
Oh, that you sent, Cody. I saw Halo and I just assumed. I apologize. But,
I actually didn't see the Halo news.
All right.
Yeah,
Cody.
I think this dropped today. Today's the 28th. Yeah, this is by, again, this sounds weird coming out of my mouth, but Bloomberg's Jason Schreier
I'm used to it.
Writing that Microsoft's new Halo game loses top director after project delay. This is the latest chapter in kind of the ongoing development struggles of 343 and the new Halo game, Halo Infinite. And this time, Chris Lee, who was overseeing production of Halo Infinite, said that he confirmed to Bloomberg that he's no longer working on the project. He's the second top director to leave in the past 2 years. So yeah, I don't think there's much. I don't think there are many details beyond that. But this is just kind of another red flag for this game's trajectory. After the delay, I think we kind of came to a consensus on was probably a good idea given what we had seen. But it's not a great sign when one of the top creatives at your team kind of just kind of gets out of there few months out.
And not just to go to another project or like, because the quote is, "I'm looking at future opportunities."
Yeah.
Like
you didn't have anything lined up.
Yeah. At this point, what's going to have more directors, this Halo game or the Uncharted movie?
Probably Uncharted.
I don't know, man.
There's still time for that one.
I'm interested in your thoughts on this, Larry, because I'm with you, Cody. Like, the more I see stuff like this, the more I'm just like, oh, where is this game at?
I was trying to find Chris Lee's like pedigree. We need a video game equivalent of IMDb.
Yeah.
Because I'm not positive on this, but I don't think he was like a newcomer to the Halo franchise.
No, I remember. Well, this might not be him, but I remember them making a big deal of like a former Halo Bungie guy coming back to kind of oversee the franchise, right?
Yeah, let's see.
So he was on Reach, ODST. That's in his Twitter bio.
I found him on IMDb actually. Finally, so he's like deep Bungie, my dudes. He worked on Oni back in 01.
Oh wow.
So yeah, this guy's been working. He's worked on every Halo game in some way, just about. So that makes this an even bigger deal to me. For him to step away from this like turning point in the franchise, and for him not to be the first guy to do it. Like I want this game to be great, and just one thing after another piles up and makes me very concerned about it. And I don't know how Halo like continues to exist if this next one goes poorly. I don't know if there's any more second chances for Halo.
Yep. We'll see.
Yeah, and I mean, yeah, it's also notable that like Microsoft, in terms of strategy, has shifted away from like the one exclusive will make or break us kind of model. And I wonder how much of that is them obviously kind of having a vision for the future of Xbox, but also kind of reading the room on where Halo is at as a franchise.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, let's move on to Offbeat, which is where we talk about some of the weird goings-ons in the gaming industry. And I've got mine right here, guys. This is from Tom Warren over at The Verge. Microsoft has made an Xbox Series X fridge that it's giving away, and Snoop Dogg has one. So, you know, we've had our next gen console design memes. The can't find my cursor for some reason. There it is. We've had the PlayStation router and the Xbox fridge, and they went all out with this thing, guys. If you're watching over on YouTube, I'm playing the video that's available on The Verge. They put it in like legit Xbox packaging with Master Chief on the back of it. The fridge is a 1-to-1 scale replica of the Xbox Series X, measuring more than 6 feet tall and weighing 400 pounds. It even has an Xbox logo on the front that lights up, and the Series X boot sound fires up when you use the disk drive slot to open the fridge door, which would get annoying after a while, I would think.
Especially as someone with a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old.
So it says, while Microsoft values this fridge at $499, the same price as the Series X, which is crazy, because fridges are expensive.
Yeah.
You're not going to be able to purchase one. Instead, they're giving away one of the Xbox Series X fridges in a competition, with a winner being picked on November. Are you guys going to enter this, and would you want one of these in your house?
Yeah, my fridge broke last year, and my landlord, he went and bought a $400 fridge for sure, because the thing is trash. So I mean, I'll take this thing no matter how inconvenient it is. It can't be worse than what I'm working with.
I don't think it's a bad fridge. That's not what I'm saying.
Oh no, I know, but like the awkwardness, the weirdness of it, like the fact that in my wood panel kitchen this would look extra out of place. I don't care. Put it in there.
The inside light is gross.
That green light. Yeah.
I thought it was awesome.
It makes everything in it kind of look moldy. It's
You
kind
need
of
to scroll down a little on stream.
Oh, sorry. I guess when you're looking at it from a food perspective, you're correct. Like, I definitely don't want a green hue on all of my food.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Although I admire their dedication.
Picture.
Yeah, I admire their dedication to the bit. Like the bananas are cut like they're the mouths of the elites from Halo. I really do admire their commitment to this. It's amazing.
The massive commitment here is also, I don't think this thing has a freezer, so
Oh, never mind. I gotta have a freezer.
so that's a little inconvenient. But Microsoft is not a producer of fridges, right? Like, so for them to have gone out and had this custom built, like, I wonder what company they partnered with to do this, because that's some dedication. Like, hey, we're gonna put this thing together that we're not gonna fully sell. Like, do you think they're missing an opportunity? You think they should sell this? No?
Well, two things. One, I don't know. I think like a handful of these would sell. I think you could probably like limited edition this. Like we're selling 50 Xbox fridges and probably make bank.
What's
But
the
the
high?
second thing is,
Sound
you're right.
influencers.
They had this custom designed. And I want to know what company that was with, since they were able to get something this cool for $400 so that I can buy a better fridge.
I guess that's the reason that you can't sell it, because it's not like they've been researching and developing this fridge for years and years and like put it through testing, and so it's really just like a novelty item. But I don't know. Like, okay, let's say that, let's forget those. Like, let's forget that caveat and just say they're going to do a limited run of these. Larry, you said 50. What is the highest number you think they could produce of this fridge and sell through them? Because I think it's way higher than 50.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say. I'd say they might be able to do like 1,000. I don't think there are more than 1,000 people who are gonna want an Xbox fridge, but I might be wrong.
Think about the number of man caves, gaming rooms, like streamers that would want this shit in their
I
back.
was
Like,
gonna say influencers.
Yeah, a
totally
fridge covering up this ugly mirror back here. That would be
like, yeah, just imagine. And then you don't have to walk anywhere for your 3 drinks. You can just roll your chair back. I'm talking to you into this, aren't I?
Yeah.
I think
Snoop Dogg alone would buy 100.
you could. I think you could do a 10,000 unit run of these and sell them easily.
I think you're right.
Easily, and I would buy one.
Pitch it.
I would buy one.
What's the
What is
most you would
the-
spend on one?
Oh, I'm not gonna buy this. I would never buy this thing.
Cody's too refined.
I'm not a hashtag gamer.
I wouldn't want this in my kitchen, but like if I had a gaming space set up,
If you could set it up horizontally, then I would get it.
like an ice chest.
Yeah.
But even like just real commitment to the bit, right? Like you can put your Xbox horizontal. So why can't you put your Xbox fridge horizontal?
Because all of the Freon goes to the back of it and it ends up overheating. All right.
What is
guys.
the PlayStation equivalent of this?
A giant ass router. That's what they got to come out with.
That's true.
A router that
6
services
router.
all of downtown Chicago. Oh, guys, gaming is weird. I love it. Only here.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's get out of here. Let's go around the circle. Who are you? Where can people find you? And what are you going to be tweeting about this week, Larry?
I'm Larry. You can find me on Twitter at Lair Hunt. No, you can't. Sorry. Still don't know my Twitter thing. You can
Bamboozled.
find me on Twitter at Still in Flux. And there's some important stuff going on Tuesday. I'll be tweeting a lot that day, probably.
All right. Codsworth. I didn't think of a nickname for you. I'm sorry.
It's all right.
I still
I'll let you go this time. My name is Cody. You can find me on Twitter at ProElectioneer. I will most likely be staying off of social media next week, but in the meantime, I'm going to be tweeting about this fun conversation that I had with on my other podcast, the one I do for work. Talked with the guy who owns the Ghost Tour company in Alexandria, Virginia, where I work, and he was able to share a bunch of spooky stories. So if you're on the lookout for some fun kind of quarantine-friendly Halloween stuff, check that out.
What's it called? Tell the people where to find it.
Podcast is called Speakeasy. 2 words. You can find it pretty much anywhere. It's on Spotify. It's on Audible. It's on Apple Podcasts, Google Play.
How about
everywhere.
Luminary?
Is it on Luminary?
Not on Luminary.
Okay.
Not on Luminary yet.
Not worth listening to.
Once we get that Conan O'Brien partnership, then we'll
Yeah.
We'll
Yeah.
go over to Luminary.
All right, I'm Luke Croft. You can find me on Twitter at itishoagie, and I'm definitely going to check that podcast out. That episode sounds awesome. I want to hear some spooky Alexandria ghost stories. But this week, I'll probably be tweeting about the election as well, and also just Meteor 2020, right? Just plow us out of the sky.
Why couldn't NASA's announcement be that the moon was falling?
Consume us, great moon. All right, guys. Well, we're gonna get out of here. Thanks for tuning in. This has been PvA Radio, and yeah, back to a normal Wednesday schedule, at least until the holidays roll around and blow everything up. But until then, we love you. Goodbye.
The second biggest monkey head I've ever seen.
I used to be an adventurer like you. Then I took an arrow in the knee.
The definition of insanity.
Would you like me to come that shortwave radio?